Hello friends, welcome back. In this video, I am going to talk in detail about restriction endonucleases. These are the important enzymes of our DNA technology. These restriction endonucleases are also called as molecular scissors, or we can also call them as DNA cutting enzymes. As you all know, in order to make a recombinant DNA molecule, first we need to isolate a gene of interest, right? So if this gene is to be introduced into a vector, for example, we take this as a vector. This is a plasmid, right? Which is a circular extra chromosomal genetic material that is seen in a bacterial cell. So to make a recombinant DNA molecule, what we are going to do? We have to combine this gene with the plasmid, right? So for that reason, we are going to open up this vector with the help of an enzyme called restriction endonucleases, because these are the enzymes which can cut the DNA at a specific nucleotide sequence, and we are going to introduce this gene of interest in order to make a recombinant DNA molecule, right? So I am saying that these enzymes are the DNA cutting enzymes, right? So here it is going to cut the DNA and it is going to open up the vector where we can introduce the gene of interest to make a recombinant DNA molecule, because here we are combining the two different genes, that we simply call it as recombination. Hope you are clear. So in order to define the restriction endonucleases, we can say that these are the enzymes which are going to cut the DNA at a specific nucleotide sequence. You all know very well about nucleases. So these are the enzymes which can degrade the nucleic acids, whether it could be DNA or RNA, right? So RNases will specifically degrade RNA and DNases will specifically degrade DNA, right? So if you take these nucleases, again they were of two types. They are exonucleases and endonucleases. This restriction enzyme comes under this category. Endo means within. If you take this as a DNA molecule, these restriction endonucleases are going to cut within the DNA molecule. So we are calling them as endonucleases, not exonucleases. Clear? See, I'll tell you the difference with the diagrammatic representation. Observe the diagram carefully here. See, these are the nucleotides, right? Adenine, guanine, cytosine, thymine, right? So these are joined together by hydrogen bonds, right? And each nucleotide is linked together by a phosphodiester bond. And these enzymes, these nucleases are going to cut the phosphodiester bond, right? If you observe the exonucleases, see here, the cleavage has taken place here. That means the terminal nucleotides are removed. So here these exonucleases are going to break the phosphodiester bond and they are going to remove the nucleotides from the end of the DNA molecule, that is at the terminal region of a DNA molecule. Whereas coming to the endonucleases, they are the group of enzymes which are going to specifically cut the DNA at a recognition site. See here, they are going to cut within the DNA molecule. See, observe the difference here. Here the nucleotides were removed at the terminal region, but here in case of the endonucleases, so this is the cleavage site where it is going to cut the double-stranded DNA at a specific recognition site, that is within the DNA molecule. Those are the endonucleases. So, for example, this is the DNA. Now you have treated this DNA with the restriction enzyme. So these are the cleavage sites. And here there is a gene which we are interested in, right? Once we treat this DNA with the restriction enzymes, then after the digestion we are going to get a multiple DNA fragments. So here it is our gene of interest. In this way we are going to isolate the gene of interest, right? Now after the digestion with the restriction enzymes, we got multiple DNA fragments with a different size. So if we want to determine the size and the different fragments that we got after the digestion of restriction enzymes, we can go with restriction analysis. By using restriction analysis, we can determine the number of DNA fragments that got after digestion with the restriction enzymes and also the size of the DNA fragments that we got after the digestion with these restriction enzymes. These restriction endonucleases were discovered by Arbor, Smith and Nathans in the year 1978. One of the key breakthrough in the field of genetic engineering, and that is the reason they were awarded with the Nobel Prize. So it is very important to have these restriction endonucleases in order to proceed with gene cloning. As I already told you that if you choose a vector, suppose we have many vectors of same type, if we treat it with the restriction enzymes and if it is cut into a multiple fragments, we cannot proceed with the cloning experiment, right? Now if we cut with the restriction, so for suppose this is one cut, this is second cut, this is third cut and this is fourth cut, right? If we get 4 to 5 different strands of this vector, how can we join our gene of interest into this vector? It is not possible, right? So if we choose a vector of same type and we apply a restriction enzyme digestion, then we are going to have a cut exactly at a same position onto all these vectors. See, for example, now these are the vectors, right? So they have a recognition site over here because all these vectors are same. When you use a restriction enzyme which is going to cut this DNA at a specific recognition site, now all these vector molecules are cut open exactly at the same location. Once we open up the vector DNA molecule, now we can incorporate the gene of interest, right? This is the recombinant DNA molecule. This is the new DNA which we can generate with the help of this restriction enzyme. We can call it as a foreign DNA. Because this DNA doesn't belong to the plasmid, we are incorporating it into this vector, making a recombinant DNA molecule. Coming to the discovery of these restriction enzymes, these restriction endonucleases were discovered early in the year 1950s. These are the degradative enzymes that are produced by the bacterial species. Over 1200 restriction enzymes were discovered so far. Here you need to know about the phenomena called host controlled restriction. You might have heard about a bacteriophage. So these are the viruses which specifically infect the bacteria. If you take a life cycle of a bacteriophage, say for example this is the bacterial cell. So the bacteriophage is going to attach with the bacterial cell with the help of a specific receptors. Once it gets attached to the bacterial cell, it is going to eject the nucleic acid into a bacterial cell as a part of its life cycle. So once the genetic material enters into the bacterial cell, it will undergo the replication, transcription and translation, giving rise to a new viral progeny. So once all the virion particles assemble within the bacterial cell, they are going to lyse the bacterial cell and the new viral progeny will be released, right? So this is the life cycle of a bacteriophage. But here people observed that the bacterial species are capable of producing these restriction endonucleases. Like whenever this genetic material from the virus entered into a bacterial cell, the bacteria which is capable of producing the restriction endonucleases is going to cut this genetic material into several fragments. I'll explain you with the diagram. See the picture here. So this is the bacterial cell that got infected with the bacteriophage. So once the bacteriophage gets attached to the bacterial cell, it is going to release the genetic material into a bacterial cell. Now what happens is, this bacterial cell is capable of producing restriction endonucleases. See the picture here. So these are the sites where the restriction enzyme binds to the phage DNA. So this is the DNA from the bacteriophage. So the restriction enzymes that is produced by this bacterial cell is going to cleave this DNA of virus into a multiple fragments. Now this phage DNA is cleaved and it got inactivated. Now it cannot undergo the process of replication, transcription or translation in order to produce new viral progeny. It got inactivated here with the help of restriction enzymes that are produced by the bacterial cell. In this way, the bacteria will protect itself from the harmful effect of a bacteriophage. That's why we call this phenomena as host controlled restriction. So what is the host here? Host is the bacterial cell, right? So this bacteria is producing the restriction enzymes that are digesting the DNA that is from the bacteriophage. Now you may get a doubt that the bacteria will also have a genetic material called DNA. If it produce restriction enzymes, if these enzymes are going to cut its own genetic material, then it will be lethal to bacterial cell, right? But in this case it doesn't occur. Why? Because it is going to protect itself from the attack by carrying additional methyl groups. And these methyl groups will block the degradative enzyme action. Hope you are clear. So these bacterial cells which are producing the restriction endonucleases will exhibit a phenomena called host controlled restriction. In that case, what happens is, if a bacteriophage infects the bacterial cell by releasing its genetic material, that entire genetic material will be cleaved into several fragments due to the action of the restriction enzymes that are produced by the bacteria. And once this phage DNA is made into several fragments, they get inactivated. But the bacterium's own DNA is not destructed by these restriction enzymes. Why? Because the bacteria will carry additional methyl groups. Due to the presence of these methyl groups, they are going to block the degradative action of these restriction enzymes. These are some of the examples of this restriction endonucleases. I'll provide you the list of these restriction enzymes at the end of the video. Each enzyme will have a specific recognition sequence. If you take EcoR1, see, like, look into the nomenclature, like BAMH1. So this is the enzyme that was isolated from Bacillus amyloliquefaciens. EcoR1, this is the enzyme that was isolated from E. coli. And HindIII, this is the enzyme that was isolated from a bacteria called Haemophilus influenzae. If you look into the nomenclature, for example, take this EcoR1. E, this is the first letter, right, which indicates the genus. Escherichia is the genus name. And Eco, see, right, these two letters indicate the species name, that is coli. And R is the restriction enzyme, and this Roman letter 1 indicates the first enzyme that was isolated from Escherichia coli. If you take HindIII, so this is H, right? So H refers the genus, that is Haemophilus, and IN, which are the next two letters, indicates the species name, that is Influenza, and D is the strain type. Whereas the Roman letter 3 indicates that this is the third enzyme that was isolated from Haemophilus influenzae. This is how the restriction enzymes were given with the names. Coming to the types of restriction endonucleases, based on their mode of action, they are classified as type 1, type 2 and type 3. Type 1 and type 3 are complex and they have a limited role in genetic engineering experiments, but we generally use type 2 restriction endonucleases in genetic engineering experiments. So out of these 3 restriction endonucleases, we most commonly prefer type 2 restriction enzymes. for our genetic engineering experiments. Let us discuss about them in detail. Coming to the type 1 restriction endonucleases, they have both restriction and modification activity, and the restriction depends upon the methylation status of that particular target DNA. And moreover, cleavage occurs approximately 1000 base pairs away from the recognition site. See, these enzymes will have a specific recognition site, right? And this type 1 restriction enzymes are going to cut the DNA 1000 base pairs away from the recognition site. This type 1 restriction enzymes require S-adenosyl methionine, ATP adenosine triphosphate, and Mg2+ magnesium ions as a cofactor for their activity. And this type 1 enzymes are composed of 3 subunits. The first subunit is specificity subunit, which specifically determines the DNA recognition site. So in order to cut the DNA, it should have a specific recognition site, right? So these enzymes are going to recognize those sites and they specifically cut the DNA at that location. So this enzyme is having a 3 subunits. Those are a specificity subunit, a restriction subunit, and a modification subunit. Coming to the type 2 restriction enzyme, restriction and modification that are mediated by a specific enzyme. So it is possible to cut the DNA without any modification. Cleavage occurs at specific sites. I gave you so many examples, like if you take HIND3 or if you take EcoR1, each enzyme will have a specific recognition sequence, and these enzymes are going to exactly cut at that particular position only. See, we can often call them as palindromic sequences. I'll give you an example here. If you take EcoR1, so this is the enzyme that was isolated from Escherichia coli. It have a recognition sequence of GAATTC. So it is going to specifically cut the DNA within this position. If the DNA is having a sequence of GAATTC, and when you use this EcoR1 enzyme, it is going to cut the DNA exactly at this location, that is in between G and A. So they are going to recognize a particular sequence. See, for example, this is a double-stranded DNA. If one strand contains a sequence of GAATTC, now the opposite strand will have a sequence of C, T, T, A, and G. Right? See, observe the picture carefully. So one strand is having a sequence of GAATTC and the other strand is having a sequence of CTTAAG. Now read it in the opposite direction, you will get the same sequence, that is GAATTC. We call them as palindromic sequences. That means which will give the same meaning when you read it in the opposite direction. For example, if you take madam, MADAM, in opposite direction MADAM. So these are the palindromic sequences, like Malayalam, Liril, all these are the palindromic sequences, right? See here, the EcoR1 enzyme is going to cut in between this G and A, right? So in the opposite strand also it is going to cut here, that is in between G and A, because both the sequences are the same. We are calling them as a palindromic sequence. So when we apply this enzyme, it is going to cut the double-stranded DNA exactly in between the guanine and adenosine in both the strands. Moreover, these enzymes require magnesium ions as cofactor, but they doesn't require ATP. And also these enzymes are widely used for mapping and constructing the DNA in vitro. Coming to the type 3 restriction enzymes, these enzymes recognize and methylate the same DNA sequence, but they are going to cleave the DNA 24 to 26 base pairs away from the recognition sequence. Whereas here type 1 also going to cut the DNA 1000 base pairs away from the recognition site. And this type 3 enzymes also require ATP, magnesium ions, and as well as S-adenosyl methionine for their activity. And this type 3 enzymes will cut only one strand. Recognition sites in the opposite orientation is necessary to break the DNA duplex. Moreover, they also contain two subunits. In case of type 1, they have 3 subunits, but in case of type 3, they have only 2 subunits. That is R and M. R stands for the restriction subunit and M stands for the modification subunit. When we treat DNA with the restriction enzymes, we may get a blunt end or we may get a sticky ends. Sticky ends are also called as cohesive ends. So the generation of blunt ends or the sticky ends depends upon the type of restriction enzyme we use. Some of the restriction enzymes produce blunt ends and some of the restriction enzymes produce sticky ends, because each enzyme will have a specific recognition sequence, right? So in case of blunt ends, these enzymes are going to cut the double stranded DNA exactly at a same position. But in case of the sticky ends, the restriction enzymes will not exactly cut the double stranded DNA at a same position, so resulting in a small single stranded overhangs at both the ends of the DNA. I'll explain you with the diagram. Observe the picture carefully. So this diagram is for the blunt ends and this is for the sticky or cohesive ends. Look at the sequence of double stranded DNA here. As I told you earlier that these restriction enzymes are going to cut the DNA exactly at the same position, that is in case of both the strands of the DNA. See, this is the sequence. N stands for a nucleotide, A, G, C, T. So when we use a restriction enzyme ALU1, so here the exact location of cleavage is here. So it is going to cut the double stranded DNA exactly at this position. See, this is the blunt end. So here these phosphodiester bonds are broken with the help of an enzyme called ALU1. So the double stranded DNA is cleaved exactly at this location, giving rise to a blunt end. Observe the difference here in case of sticky or cohesive ends. When we use an enzyme called EcoR1, so as I told you, it have a recognition sequence of GAATTC and it is specifically going to cut in between this guanine and adenine, right? See, observe the picture here. This is the double stranded DNA with a sequence of GAATTC. So guanine pairs with cytosine, adenine pairs with thymine. When you read it in the opposite direction, it gives GAATTC. Now when we apply this enzyme, it is going to cut in between this G and A, as well as in the other strand it is going to cut in between this guanine and adenine. So now what happens? Cleavage is staggered usually by 2 or 4 nucleotides. Observe this picture here. So there is no phosphodiester bond here in between the guanine and adenine because this is a cleavage site, right? Observe the other strand. There is no phosphodiester bond in between guanine and adenine. This is another cleavage site. So that means on one strand the cleavage is over here, and on the other strand the cleavage that is in the opposite direction in between the guanine and the adenine. So this cleavage results in the DNA fragments having a short single stranded overhangs at each end. Observe the overhangs over here. So when you treat with a certain restriction enzyme called EcoR1, it will recognize the palindromic sequence, that is GAATTC, and it is specifically going to cause cleavage in between the G and A, thereby producing a sticky end or a cohesive end. See, make out the difference. In case of blunt ends, both the strands were cut exactly at the same location, but it doesn't happen here. Here the cut is different from here. So it is leaving a short single stranded segments at both the ends of the DNA. They are nothing but the sticky ends. Coming to the applications, These restriction enzymes are used in the process of insertion of genes into plasmid vectors during gene cloning and protein expression experiments. As I told you just now, how we introduce gene of our interest into a plasmid in order to make a recombinant DNA molecule, and when we introduce it into a host and made it to express, we can get product out of it. Moreover, these restriction enzymes are used for the RFLP analysis. RFLP stands for restriction fragment length polymorphism, for identifying individuals as well as for the identification of strains of a particular species. I'll tell you in detail about this RFLP technique in my coming up videos. And moreover, the other important application is these restriction enzymes are used to distinguish gene alleles by specifically recognizing single base changes in DNA known as single nucleotide polymorphisms. And this is only possible if a mutation alters the restriction site that is present in a allele. Hope you all know what this mutation means. If there is a sudden change, that means the genetic information that is present in the nucleic acid will be altered with the incorporation of the gene or with the deletion of the gene. So there will be a change in the genetic information, that we call it as mutation. So with the help of this restriction enzymes, it is possible to distinguish gene alleles by specifically recognizing a single base change in the DNA. Definitely I will make a video on this single nucleotide polymorphism also. Hope you are clear with this restriction endonucleases. Soon I will come up with my next video. Thank you so much.